Replit.com. This is how fast I actually just get to what I'm literally I'm like a zero preparations in terms of like the stream. I'm like boom, ready to start. So actually that's really cool. It's one of the advantages that of something like Replit, to be honest. So and I can get started quickly. I keep getting confused. I think this I thought it would kind of collapse that side because to be honest, I don't really need it sometimes, so it'll be cool if I could collapse that. But anyway, what are we doing today? So we're trying to do we are trying to think about how we're gonna test that stuff, right? Because to be honest, I don't know if I'm ready to deploy that and spend the money on these. I mean, obviously there's a couple of to-dos to be done, but let's just rethink that. I mean, there's a lot of things and a lot of functions in here that I'm not sure if I need, right? I mean, I probably need because of the standards, right? But who knows? So let's get rid of unneeded stuff. Let's just go top to bottom. So we've got, so this guy has the coin contract. That's cool. So we have the list of validators, list of validations, and that's, yeah, that is the so this is token ID, and then who is validated it. Or who is the last validator, to be honest. I'm gonna be losing. Do I need to know that? No, I don't need to know that. To be honest, I don't need to know that. It's unnecessary. And because I'm looking for 3 validations. Okay, but I have to be careful that I don't give the same person, the same thing to validate twice, right? But I mean, here the problem is that a mapping is not good because a token, like that's just one entry given a token, right? I think I'll just leave with these for now. Let's see. It's a limitation. So because I'm going to be doing a random selection of what you validate, I'm going to assume that chances that you get the same thing are lower. The same token to validate. So we'll see. I mean, validations, that's important. So from the token ID, how many times it's been validated? We have the owners, we have the CIDs, and I mean, this is just standard stuff. Token approvals. I think that's part of that has to be there because it's part of the standard. So the name is ansys NFT, and what I do here is I create an instance of the coin contract as well, as I construct these, right? That's an interesting thing. When is this just called once as the contract is initialized, as in like deployed? Is the constructor called just once? I guess so, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. I think so. Then that's standard, balance of, owner of, name, symbol, token URI. So what is it? What is these doing? URI query for non-existent token. No, okay, that's your message. There's a base URI. So okay, so base URI for computing token URI. If set the resulting URI for each token will be the condition of the base URI going to be empty by default. Can be written. Okay, I think I'm not going to use that, but we can keep it as empty. I think what this does is if you have something like you're going to host your NFT somewhere and then you want to just give them a URI that has a namespace or something. Okay, so just like that. Approve is to approve people messing or managing with your NFTs. Get approved. Set approval for all is approved for all. Transfer forms is a transfer form. These are all standard methods. I'm going to keep them like that. Safe transfer exists is approved or owner. Safe mint. Okay, so okay, that is definitely getting rid of these. So I'm not touching the internal method. No, I should touch the internal method. So rewards the owner with the answers coins, calls the mint function from the coin contract. That's a good point. So we have the coin contract, and then we have a mint. But you know what? I think that's done in my public mint. I think I'm not touching this one. Burn, transfer, approve, set approve all. I mean, this is all standard stuff. It just bothers me because I haven't really checked. I mean, some of the stuff is just they're just empty functions, but it's fine. And this is okay. So these are my functions. So what do we do here? Is the CID exists, the validator exists. Okay, that is not needed anymore. Get token ID by CID. I think that's used. And now this is the public mint function. So what we're doing, we require for the CID to exist because we're minting a CID. We give the last token ID, we increase the last token ID +1, and we create the token ID with this, and then we call the internal mint. Then we what are we doing? We associate the CID with a token. Okay, and actually I need to, okay, so I need to validate. No, and that's it. I should document this probably better. I only need to get validations. So what this does is given a token ID. Okay, so actually what I should do is upon successful mint, I also should basically set the validations to 0. I'm not gonna document anything. What are we doing here? Oh, actually that was, I think that was missing. So I'm not ready to test yet. That's actually missing. So and yeah, that's definitely missing, but let me just delete that because it bothers me. And so what are we doing here? We've got the mint, and so we've got validate, and then they have to give you know what, a validation token ID. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have so we're gonna store basically a token. For a given token, we're gonna store a validation validation token IDs. So validation token IDs, or validation IDs, I'll just call validation IDs. So this will basically, or the other way around, that's going to be the validation ID. And so we're going to have last validation ID, and so we need last token ID and last validation ID to be initialized in the constructor. To be 0. Okay, and so exactly validation ID. And so basically what we'll do is the validation ID will just be given and it's going to be mapped to one specific token ID. So actually the function, so get validations, what is that? Get validations, it gets the number of validations. And so function get validation ID. So what this does is it actually gives you a validation ID, right? So it returns you it. So what it does is generate or pick a random token ID, then do basically last validation ID plus one, validation ID equals last validation ID. And so what we're doing is validation IDs, validation ID. So here's like token ID, let's say 0, token ID, and then return return these. So basically what we're doing is we're picking a random token ID that needs validation, and exactly, and then we are adding it to the validation IDs list, and we're giving these to the end user. And so what the end user will do is basically give us a validation token ID, right? So we first get the what has to exist is the exists basically validation IDs, validation ID. So this gives me a token ID, and I want this token ID to exist. Okay. Can I just do token ID equals this, and then simply say exists token ID and then validations token ID. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not so sure if I need to even check that, right? Because, yeah, well, I should check that always. Then, I don't know if the require statements can be, they can be, you know, later in the code. They don't have to be at the beginning of the function, I guess. Then validators, token ID. So, you know, so these means the token IDs and the CIDs are a black box for the end user. So the end user just gets a validation ID, which then we know how to map it. And it's given on the fly, so you're not able to check that. And then cool. And so we basically we now need to just reward the owner, which we do by saying coin contract. I think it's coin contract, is it? Yeah, coin contract mint. How does the mint look like? Account and amount. So the account is the validate, no, so sort of the owner. So owner's token ID. Okay. And and then we reward the validator by say coin contract mint basically validator, and so we give 1 coin and we give 2 coins. I don't know, this is just for the owner. The validator, I don't know, that's just something to be discussed. Cool, but I think that is basically it. And I need to pick a random, and I mean that's gonna be it. It's a fairly naive contract, I think, but that's definitely gonna be it. How do I pick a random token ID? That needs validation. Solidity. I mean, the one thing I could do is basically a simple, it's not maybe a random, but it's like iterate over, okay, actually, so what we could do is just iterate over the mappings and then historically, right? And so instead of it being random, what I can do is iterate over the list of mappings and kind of get you the first that doesn't have enough validations. So it's a first come first served kind of thing. Yeah, think so, right? What is the smartest way to do that so it does not take too much gas to do that? So I have last token ID, so I can go from 1 to last token ID. I can easily iterate, but I don't want to iterate too much if I know that well, I can keep another pointer, which is basically something that we can call just the next token next validation token ID. I mean, next token ID that needs validation. The thing is, the only problem with this mechanism is that if you're fast enough, right, you validate and then you request another validation and you're gonna kind of get the same thing. So there's a possibility where just one address is asked to validate the same thing 3 times, which is not what we want. But we could just actually make it run, and if it just catches up with the last token ID, we start again. So we could just do it like that. So next validation token ID starts with 0, right? So it's not random, but it's kind of like you give priority to the stuff that hasn't been validated yet, right? So next validation kind of, so okay. So basically what we do is not next but last. Let's just follow. So the last token that was validated, right? Last because this is also computationally cheap, because I just get, but you know, it could be that there's a way to hack that, but I don't think so. It's as easy as you want to get the validation ID. So let me first of all increase that by 1, then give you then if we should probably get that as a separate function. That's fine. If last validation ID is bigger than last token ID, right? What we do is we set it to be 1, so we start over, right? So if I catch up with the last token that has been used, after increasing it is bigger, then I start over. But then I need to also move it to, and then I basically need to make sure that, and this is kind of where it gets trickier, right? So I need to kind of get to the last one that's already to the instead of the one that it's, yeah. So I need to iterate here in a way. I mean I can't escape that, right? I have to just say while and then check while validations token ID it's basically is kind of while this is smaller or equal than smaller than 0 or bigger than 3, basically keep iterating, right? And then okay. It's not that simple. Let me think. I wanted to avoid that. So but essentially I have to because I want to keep the validations, right? So I think I have to just I think I have to compute it. It's fine. Last validation, I have to compute it. So last token ID. Okay, but no, because this at least guarantees that I don't kind of get stuck with the same one and keep validating the same one, right? Which I want to definitely avoid. So essentially I need another function that is get token ID to validate. So it's basically what? Eternal view returns, yeah. And And so, so basically I just call this one. So, and what this does is, it's because this is where things get messy. Okay, so last, how did I call it? Last validation token ID. So I'll say I equals last validation content ID, and then essentially, yeah, I start basically iterating and just saying, well, last token ID +1, and now I say while, and whatever the condition it is here, you know, while you're not finding that, then keep increasing I equals I +1, you know, kind of modulo last token ID, if I equals 0, then basically I equals 1. Is there a smart way to do that? I mean, you know, I don't want I to be 0, right? So, and then so the conditions here are that while the opposite of these, the negation of these, right? So while this equals 0, or this is bigger than 1, than 3, and I is different than last validation token. So this means we haven't done a full circle, right? I don't know, I have to double check. How do I know that I have given a full circle? How do I know I haven't given a full circle? J equals I. That's definitely, I don't feel comfortable with the logic. It's easy to make mistakes. So I'd say, you know, if I'll just say basically require that I is different than J, otherwise return all tokens have been validated, or no tokens, yeah, and then return I don't know. We'll have to test this next time. I ran out of time. But basically test that well. It's just because this is so easy for this to for us get in trouble with this. Basically, what I say is I get the last validation. Is it last validation token ID? Yeah, last validation token ID. So it's the ID of the token that was last validated. Well, and we want to kind of do these as well. So that was given, right, to validate. And so essentially what we're doing is So we're giving this token, and we're saying, sorry, I was just, I went somewhere else for a second in my head. We take the one and we add one, and so we check. Okay, so while token ID, so token ID basically is no, this is I. So so if the validations are below 0 or above 3, like while we're getting these entries, we just go and check the next one. And we haven't done the full circle. If I goes back to the last one, then it means we've done the full circle. And so what we're doing here is we're taking I, increasing it by 1, and modulo last token ID. So if we get to the last token ID, modulo last token ID plus 1, I think so. So if we get to the last token ID plus 1, we want this to be 0, right? But then if it's 0, we don't like 0, so we go to 1. And so because it starts at 1, and then once we're done with this, it means that we've either found the one that it's different, so that this is different, and then this condition breaks, and so we are here, and then if this is different than J, it means we found one, and so we assign it as the one that we're returning this one. If not, it means we've given the full circle, and so we say all tokens have validated. I don't know, I think it makes sense, but this has to be tested, well tested, probably even outside of these, just because I don't know, I need to probably do some input output kind of tests, see if that works well, and off you go, I think, right? We get the token ID here, last validation ID, then we use that last validation ID as a proxy for the token ID, right? And we return that. And so this is what we then use to fetch back the token ID, which we have to declare in these cases, right? Yeah. Okay. I think we have now all the functions, essentially, and then basically this is how we mean stuff. Okay, so next time we'll do the testing. See you next time.